very good afternoon and welcome back to the Analyst of Vajiram and Ravi, where we bring to you detailed discussion of important articles from both the papers, that is, the Hindu and Indian Express. Today is 6th of December, and what are the important articles of the day? Let's have a look. In the first article, we will read about a natural disaster which has claimed the lives of many. This is the Volcano Marapi, which has recently erupted in the Sumatra island of Indonesia. Then in the second article, we will read about a shocking case which has revealed allegations of scam in the organ donation against a private institution in India. And we will hereby also read about the scenario of organ donation and the regulations therein. Then in the next article, I will take you through some of the global pledges that are going on in the Dubai COP, the COP of 28. Then we will, from prelims point of view, read about some of the standard positioning system, not just of India, that is NaVic, but also across the world, and we will have a comparative analysis. And in the last one, we will find out some of the key highlights and some of the key features of a report that has been published by WMO. This is under the name of Global Climate Report of 2011 to 2020. So let's get started. So our first topic is Volcano Marapi, or pronounced as Merapi in Indonesian language. Now this volcano erupted in the western Sumatra part of Indonesia, and it has been such a violent volcano that it has released ashes up to 3,000 meters into the air and has also caused many casualties which are seen on a rise. So death toll till now has seen to be up to 22. So this is the context, this is why we are reading about this natural disaster. Why is this important from our examination point of view? Because it entails two parts of the syllabus. It is not only important from prelims point of view, but also heavily important from mains point of view. Because first of all, we have to read about geophysical phenomena, volcano being one, this is the part of GS1, and we also read about disaster management whenever a disaster comes. So it also deals with GS3 part of the syllabus. So let's get started now. Now this Volcano Marapi literally translates to the mountain of fire. And this particular volcano, if you see, is the most active volcano on the Sumatra island. What has recently happened that the rescue mission has been going on. This volcano has erupted 2 days back and the rescue mission is on, and it has seen a death toll rising above 20 people. And this particular event has been flagged or has garnered more attention from the media because this is the deadliest volcano since 1979. In the 1979 event, it claimed the lives of 60 people, and now about more than 20 people's life have been claimed. So this is the entire context. Now once we've understood this also has a bearing on the geography, the location of this particular volcano. Now this lies in the western part of the island of Sumatra. Sumatra, which is the third largest island of the island group archipelago called Indonesia. Now, the largest island is the island of New Guinea, and then we have Borneo Island, and the third in size is the Sumatra Island. This is also the westernmost island, as you can see, and if you want to figure out the exact location of this mountain which is erupted, it is somewhere here. It is in the northwestern part of the Sumatra Island. It has height of up to 2,800 meters, and it is also very therefore celebrated by the hikers, and because it was accommodated across, it has got livelihood across, therefore this hazard got converted into disaster because it has also claimed lives and livelihood. Then when we talk about Indonesia, it has been in news of late, and it has always been in news due to frequent eruption of volcanoes. What makes it so vulnerable to volcanicity? It is the underlying position. It lies in the Circum-Pacific belt, which is also known as the Ring of Fire, because of the highest number of volcanoes and earthquakes, basically highest amount of tectonic activity which is seen across the Ring of Fire which circumferes the entire Pacific Ocean. So it lies somewhere over here. It also is a part of this Pacific Ring of Fire, and therefore this is very vulnerable to tectonic activity. Therefore a lot many eruptions of earthquake and volcanoes can be seen in this region. So what are volcanoes? Let's talk about it. So volcanoes are nothing but a geophysical phenomena which involves the upsurgence or the emission of the internal composition of the earth on the surface of the earth via some of the cracks or vents, so that it releases or reaches out on the surface and results in the formation of many landforms. Now these landforms could be extrusive in nature, like for example calderas, craters or these cinder cones, or it could be intrusive in nature, for example creation of batholith or laccolith or lopoliths. So it results in landform formation, but at the same time it is very hazardous in nature because of the violent eruption, because of the nature of the composition. So what exactly is coming out of the Earth's surface? The internal matter that comes out is, first of all, the magma. Magma in liquid form, then some solid fragments of rocks. So this is the solid form of matter, and then in the gaseous form we have got some volcanic ashes or water vapors or other gases. So it leads to release of all the three forms of matter, and because they are erupted in such a deadly manner that they can be violative, they can be violent in nature, and therefore these are disastrous. The volcanoes, this geophysical phenomena is also disastrous in nature. Now, what leads to the causation or the creation of volcanic activity on the Earth's surface? For that, let us first understand the structure of the Earth. So, Earth typically is made up of, broadly classified into three layers. So, first is our core, then second is mantle, this is upper mantle, and then we finally have the crust. Now, when we talk about the mantle, because of the radioactivity that is going beneath, deep down the earth, we see that the temperature rises to up to 3000 to 5000 degree centigrade. And at this high temperature, it is not possible for the bonds to stay intact. So, they start releasing. As a result, the solid form of mantle starts getting converted into molten form, that is the liquid form. Why does this happen? Because the liquid form is prevalent wherever it is subjected, wherever the matter is subjected to high form of temperature, high amount of temperature. So it gets converted into liquid form. Now you know, because of the difference in the density, this density differential, as you know, that solid substances have got higher density, so they will settle down, and whatever will have lower density, for example, this molten form of magma will start rising above. So therefore, this molten magma starts reaching near the surface of the earth. Now, when it starts reaching the surface of the earth, due to its explicit composition, because it comprises of not only the liquid, but also some of the chemicals, some of the gases like sulfur dioxide, like nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, etc. So, as a result of these gases, it starts creating a form of soda, just like a soda, how it is effervescent, how it is bubbly in nature, and therefore it starts releasing upward. It starts putting pressure upward on the earth crust from wherever it finds the channel or the surface. Now, because of this effervescent or the pressure of the bubbles, liquid bubbles, this pressure would have been easily released if we would have find an open space or an open fissure. It would have very easily released from the surface. But what happens? What happens is an external pressure comes in the form of the closed chamber lid of the crust. So because now there is pressure from both the sides, internal pressure of the effervescent magma and the external pressure of the earth crust. As a result, whenever it manages to find a small vent, it erupts violently through it, and therefore this is how the volcanicity in the earth can be observed and how volcanoes are formed across the earth. I hope this is clear. Now let's talk about the other part of the volcanoes, which is the types of the volcano. Now, volcanoes can be broadly divided on the basis of certain characteristics. First is based on frequency. Frequency as to has it happened recently or has it been occurring frequently or not. On the basis of that, we have got three distinctions. One is the active volcano, the dormant and the extinct. Naturally, as the name suggests, active volcanoes are those which have been erupting recently or which have erupted recently and have been erupting frequently. So all the important volcanoes that we know, for example, Mount Merapi, for example, the Mount of Mauna Loa. So all these mountains, also the barren island of India, these are also some of the examples of active volcanoes. So these are emerging or erupting very, very frequently. Second ones are the dormant volcanoes. Now these are the ones which, yes, have erupted in the course of human history. Somebody of our race must have seen it, but we have not seen because they have not erupted frequently, they have not erupted recently. So for example, the Mount Hood of USA has erupted back in 18th century, about in 1790s, and In the Narkondam Island also of India, which is somewhere in the northwest at the location, suppose this is the Barren Island, this is somewhere where the Narkondam Island will be located, while Barren Island is an active volcano in India which is recently erupted in 2017, and this question was also asked by UPSC in its prelims examination. So please be mindful of this fact that Barren Island has recently erupted, but the Narkondam Island, which is situated in the northern part, the mapping is also important, so I am giving you the geographical reference. It has been a dormant volcano. It has not erupted in many centuries. So these are the dormant ones. And what about the extinct ones? These are the volcanoes which have not erupted in the human history. The dinosaurs must have seen it, but we have not. So these are the Ben Nevis. Ben Nevis is the tallest mountain of United Kingdoms. This is also one among the extinct volcano, and not only that, the tallest extinct volcano belongs to the northwestern Pacific Ocean. This is the Tamu Massif Peak or Tamu Massif Ridge, which has also not erupted. It has gone extinct. So this is the first category of classification. The second category is the mode of eruption, that is from where this magma is coming out. Now, whenever this magma or the internal matter comes out, whenever it reaches the surface, now it will be known as lava because the chemical composition gets altered. So, the source of coming out of magma also depends or also creates a differentiation between the type of volcano. If it is coming from a vent, then it is known as a central vent type. For example, you can see from this figure, magma is coming out in the form of a vent, in the form of a pipe, and then it leads to the creation of a conical or a hill-like landform. These are the most prevalent types of volcanoes around the world, but there is also another counterpart, which is when the magma tries to release from an elongated fissure, elongated crack. Now, as a result, they do not lead to the formation of conical surfaces, rather they lead to the formation of long fields, horizontal fields, or like dome surfaces. These are the fissure type of volcanoes. These are both named after the nature or the shape of the vent from where the magma is coming out. Type or the example of fissure type is the Deccan Traps of India. Very important example for you. Now, the next type of characteristic is on the basis of the nature of lava. Now, this lava that is coming out, its composition also greatly changes the shape of the volcano. So, for example, it is rich in metals. So, metals, as you know, belong to the S block element, and as you know that these are the elements which have got comparatively lower melting point, easier to get melt. So, whenever they are subjected to radioactivity, they will be the first one to melt, and therefore they will be very easily flowing. They will come to the liquid state very quickly. They will be easily flowing. So, therefore, they will not lead to creation of upper heighted or heighted volcanoes. So, most of the volcanoes that are basic in nature, basic as in those volcanoes which are having high metallic content, they are the shield volcanoes because they lack height. They are average heighted. Now, what about the acidic lavas? Acidic properties given by the P block element, that is the silica. Now, if the silica composition in the magma is high, it means that the melting point will also be high. Therefore, it will remain consolidated. It will remain less liquid as compared to the basic lava. So, therefore, it will not flow that freely. It will start accumulating near the surface of the volcano only. Therefore, the height due to this accumulation, this height of the volcano also goes up. Therefore, the most heighted volcanoes are made up of acidic lava. I hope it is clear to you now. Now, what are the composite and stratovolcanoes? So, as the name suggests, those volcanoes which have got multiple layers of cooled magma, cooled lava, and then, so what is happening in this case? So, for example, take this infographic, and here in stage 1, at year 1, suppose volcano has erupted, and this was the height of the volcano. Because this was an acidic lava, it could not move to great heights or to the great length. So, therefore, it started accumulating nearby only. It created a layer over here. This layer created a jam-packed pressure. Then again, when the fissure, because fissure was already present, so again when the fissure erupted the magma, it again erupted this particular vent This is close by the cooled magma, and again the magma releases and another layer of cooled magma happens. Then again another layer of cooled magma, and as a result multiple stratification of magma erupted over the time has occurred, therefore increasing the overall height of the volcano. And as a result we can see that it leads to one of the most deadliest volcanoes, because when it erupts rather violently. In fact, it is one of the most violent volcanoes. And this particular Merapi volcano is also a composite or a stratovolcano. Therefore, it is very violent in nature. It has claimed lives and livelihood. Now, what are the impact of the volcanoes? These are a natural disaster, but actually these are the natural hazards. They have both positive impact and negative impact. So what are the negative impacts? First of all, which makes it a disaster? Negative impact is the composition of the lava. Composition, this lava contains not only of very solid fragmented particles or rocks rather, so rocks or debris, but it also has a lot of ash content, which leads to the creation of aerosols or suspended solid particles in the atmosphere. It has also got lava in a very hot form. This entire composition is also known as the pyroclastic composition. This pyroclastic composition is so deadly that it leads to destruction of not only the vegetation but also the lives and the livelihood and the property. It was also seen in one classic case in Italy. So the Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD erupted so badly, so violently, that it led to burying of Roman cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. So can you see the impact, the disastrous impact of the volcanoes? And that is why, that is due to the pyroclastic component in the lava. Second is the amount of ash fall. So as I've already told you, the volcanic ashes will also be erupting. This will lead to creation of aerosol. This will obviously lead to creation or lack of visibility. But not only that, it will also harm the avian biodiversity. And along with that, it can also interrupt with the airspace's engine or the aircraft engines. Therefore, it was seen in the year 2010 that the eruption of this particular volcano, which is considered to be the most difficultly pronounced volcano. So I'll leave it to you to see. So this particular volcano of Iceland, it erupted. And the aerosol composition or the ash fall was so much so that it also hindered the air flights in the Europe. So the airspace closures had to be made. Why? Because there was lack of visibility. There was also threat because of the pollution, and there was also threat because of the lack of navigation capacities, and also because it could hinder the aircraft engines. It could hamper the aircraft engine. So it posed threat to both the machines and the man. Next is the climate effect that it can bring. So because it has got high amount of sulfuric acid content, which is responsible for two things. First of all, it traps the radiation, traps the thermal radiation more than the other aerosols or other gases. And secondly, it acts as a very good reflective agent. So as a result, if you have got sulfuric acid aerosols in the air, they will start not only absorbing the heat that is coming from the sun, but they will also start reflecting it. And as a result, the amount of heat that can reach the earth will be reduced drastically. Therefore, leading to drastic reduction of the temperature, leading to conditions like winter. So it can also have climatic and weather effect. It was seen in 1815 when Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted so violently that it led to the creation of year without summer. They could not see summer, the visibility was hindered, the temperature was lowered. And also in the year 1991, the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in Philippines also saw a similar impact. Now, it also leads to creation of mud flows, which are disastrous for the lower valley people. So for example, this is a conical volcano, and here lives the people in the valley region. Now it might happen that this debris of the volcano gets mixed with the rivers or the streams or basically the water, and leads to the creation of rapid mud flow avalanche. And therefore, it moves into the valley and it destroys the entire region. It destroys the entire livelihood and the property. So it was seen actually in Nevado del Ruiz in Colombia, where this particular mountain when it erupted, it affected the entire city of Armerio in Colombia. So this is one example that you can quote in your answers, which will help you have more enriched kind of mains answers. Last but not the least, because it is such a violent activity, it might also compromise the tectonic stability of the place, which will trigger volcanoes, which will trigger further cascading volcanoes, also earthquakes, also trigger landslides. So further disasters can be cascaded as a result of the eruption of volcano. And this was actually seen in the case of the Indian Ocean tsunami of 2008, where an underwater volcano erupted, and as a result, the tsunami wave started propagating towards the land, leading to massive destruction. Now, what are the positive impacts? We've already discussed the negative ones. The positive impacts include that the volcanic component, the composition, is having certain minerals, for example, nitrogen, phosphorus, carbon content, which are actually good for the soil, good for the fertility, so therefore good for the agriculture. So it enhances the fertility of the soil. Second, it also acts as a very good source of geothermal energy, because the energy, the radioactive energy, is essentially coming out, and therefore it leads to creation of hot springs, geysers, which can also help us in generation of geothermal power plants deriving the renewable source of energy, for example seen in Iceland and New Zealand. Then it also aids tourism and recreation, because some of the explicit landscapes like craters and lava fields and hot springs, all of them can be seen in areas which are affected by volcano. For example, the Yellowstone National Park of US and the Mount Vesuvius of Italy. So they are also forming one of the most important tourism and recreational sites. So this was all about volcanoes, their composition, their impact, and we have also read the geography along with it. Now coming to the next topic. In a very shocking case where it has been alleged on a private institution, the Apollo Hospital in Indraprastha, Delhi, that they have created a racket to lure the Myanmar people to get their kidneys in favor of or in return of cash. So the health ministry has, and the premier organization responsible for controlling the organ donations across the India, that is the National Organ and Tissue Transplantation Organization, has initiated an inquiry for this particular scam against this hospital. Now this is an allegation which is going on. We do not know the final conclusion, but we will understand the entire scenario of organ donation in India and what are the regulations in place. So first of all, let's have a briefing about the scam. So what happened? That the poor Myanmari people or the poor Myanmar youth was actually flown using flights in India to give their organs in return of the cash, in lieu of the cash payment. And they were here not servicing the Indian organ receptors, but rather the rich Myanmari class. So the rich Myanmar people who needed organs and who wished to came to India, who actually came to India and approached this particular hospital, they were provided by the organs via these poor Myanmar youth kidney or their organs. So this was the case that is going on, which has been recently flagged by a UK based The Telegraph report. So this is the case which is going on. Now, this inquiry was announced by NTTO, which is National Organ and Tissue Transplantation Organization of India. This organization comes under the Ministry of Health, and it is the apex organization which is responsible for taking care of the distribution, the registry and the procurement of organs in the entirety of India. So now once we have understood about the scam, let's also read about the organ donation scenario. So naturally, India has got the highest population in the world, largest population, along with that, one of the largest disease burden. Naturally, we would require a lot many transplants. So here, we stand in the third position in the world with the highest number of transplantations conducted on an yearly basis. Now, because of the rising diseases, we are also seeing rising demand, rising need of the organs. So much so that about 3 lakh patients in the India are currently in the waiting list. And many of them actually die because they could not manage, they could not afford to get the organs in them, organs transplanted in them, which could save their life. Now, the need is not only for the Indians, which are approaching the Indian hospitals, but also the foreigners, especially coming from the neighboring countries, which are relatively poor, relatively having lower medical facilities, they are also approaching Indian markets, Indian hospital or healthcare sector in order to get organ transplants. So one thing is clear, that the need or the demand is rising very much. But at the same time, there is critical shortage of the organ donations in India. So there is, first of all, while there is increase in the number of donors ever since we have started organ donation in India, but the pace at which it is growing, the growth rate is very less as compared to other countries like Italy, Spain, UK, etc. Then the disparity in the amount of people or in the differentiation of the people who are giving us the organs is also very, very wide. For example, the deceased donor, that is those donors which are not living, those who are dead, they are not contributing much in the total organ donations. Rather, 85% of the organ donations is coming from the living people. And only 1 in a million deceased donor contribute or pledge for the organ donation in India. Then the overall demand of kidney which is the most transplanted organ, so kidney has got more than 2 lakh annual demand and only 10,000 transplants have been annually met. Can you see the amount of demand supply gap? This can have heavy impact on the health sector, on the healthcare of India and also of the world. Then there are obviously death due to the shortages. It is seen that about 20 people are unfortunately dying because they could not get the organ transplantation at the right time and also because they could not afford it. There can also be seen certain regional disparities in north and south divide. So some of the states of north, for example, West Bengal, UP, Delhi, etc., Gujarat, they have been seeing that the number of living donors are more over there, and in the southern state, the deceased donors or the donors who are not living yet or who are not living now, they are donating more. So there is disparity from the regional basis also. Now, what are the regulations which the Indian government has promulgated to take care of the organ donation ecosystem in India? So first of all came the Act which enabled the management of organ donation. So this act is responsible for two things. First of all, governing the entire scale of issues that organ donation will be having. For example, issues of procurement, it takes care of that. Issues of donation, issues of registry, issues of their transportation and their storage, all of this is taken care, or the general rules on them are created by this act. The second thing is the creation of an institutional mechanism or institutional framework at both central and state level, which are responsible for governing this act. So at the state level, we will be having State Organ and Tissue Transplant Organization, and at the national level, we will be having National Organ and Tissue Transplant Organization. So we will be having two at both central and state level. These two were the functions of this particular act of 1994. You must remember this. The second thing, because even if there was the legislation, there was lack of awareness, there was lack of capacity. So therefore, we needed a program to build that awareness and build the capacity. So for that, National Organ Transplant Program was launched in 2014. Thereby, we also celebrate 27 November every year as the National Organ Donation Week or Organ Donation Day. Then the Deceased Organ Donation Program. Now, it was seen that this was also an awareness raising program, and it was as a result of this roping in of multiple celebrities. For example, Aishwarya Rai pledged that she will be donating her eyes, and this therefore led to increased in the amount of pledging that the donors did. So in the year of 1972, it was seen that less than 5% were pledging, and now in 2022, we can see that about 17% have pledged. But nevertheless, this is still a very small amount for the deceased donors. They should be coming forward for this. Next, Organ Retrieval and Banking Organization was created within AIIMS Delhi in order to have proper storage, procurement and distribution of the organ transplants. And finally, in 2023, in order to liberalize this sector, in order to remove the impediments. So one of the impediment that I forgot to tell was about the state. So health essentially is a state subject. Now because it is a state subject, every state will be having different policy regarding organ transplantation, different registry mechanisms as well. Now, when this act was implemented, this was not implemented uniformly by all the states, and that was one among the biggest implementational challenges. So now what government wants? Government wants to create one policy for one program. or one nation, one policy. So therefore, in lines with that, a new guideline was created in the year 2023, which removed the upper cap age for registering the organ transplant. Suppose if you are 65 years of age, before 2022, you will not be allowed to register for the organ transplant, but because there is rise in the average age or the amount of time for which a person lives, so therefore it has this upper limit has been removed now. Next, it has also removed the domicile requirement. Domicile requirement as in the person who wants to take the particular organ would have to register himself to the place where he lives, and second to the place where the donor lives. So this registry requirement would also be making everything very tedious. Therefore, they have removed this domicile requirement as well, so as to create a one nation, one policy thing. Next is, in order to ease up the pocket burdens, there is no registration fee, because many states like Gujarat, Telangana, Maharashtra, they actually ask for a fee up to 5,000 to 10,000 for the person who wanted to receive it. So further complicating the process, making it more unaffordable. Therefore, in order to save lives, make it more affordable, the registration fee has also been waived off by these guidelines. So this was all about the overview of the organ donation atmosphere in India. Now, let's talk about some of the global pledges that are ongoing or underway in the COP28 of Dubai. So, some of the pledges are tripling the renewable capacity, tripling the nuclear installed capacity, and global cooling pledge. So, kindly remember these are very potential questions from the prelims examination. Now, first of all, what is the need of the global pledges? So there are three conundrums. There are three issues that are in light of, that are having the highlights of COP28. The first issue is regarding increasing the renewable energy capacity. The second is regarding the complete phase out. This is increasing, then complete phase out of the fossil fuels. And then third is reduction of methane emissions. These are the three topics that are talk of the town in the COP28. Now, in order to fulfill them, the countries are coming together voluntarily and clubbing themselves in order to achieve the following. First of all, in order to fulfill their commitment to become net zero. Net zero, which means the amount of emission, polluting emission that I will be doing, I'll be equivalently compensating it so that my net polluting emissions would be zero. So in order to achieve the net zero status, second, in order to perform complete phase out of the fossil fuel, about 80% of the global emissions are coming from the greenhouse gases only, from the fossil fuel industry only. And that is one big concern, because no regulation as such or no COP has ever talked about the phase out of fossil fuel except for the COP26 that was held in Glasgow, and we do not have any comprehensive legislation or framework on it as yet. So this particular COP would be a guiding light as to how to go about it. Next is reducing the methane. Reducing methane is important because it is very, very potent, very harmful and strong greenhouse gas. How is it compared? By the global warming potential it has. So it has got global warming potential of 28. What do we mean by that? So it is taken with reference to the global warming potential of carbon dioxide, which is considered as 1. So for example, if carbon dioxide has certain amount released into the atmosphere, it sustains in atmosphere for about 100 years, and the amount of warming that it will be creating in that 100 years, if you multiply that by 28, that will translate to the global warming potential or the warming that can be done by your methane gas. So basically, the amount of warming that will be done by carbon dioxide in 100 years will be achieved equivalently by methane in just 28 years. And that is what we mean about about the global warming potential. And finally, to achieve the Paris goals is to limit the overall rise of the temperature from the pre-industrial level to down to 1.5 degrees centigrade. So in order to achieve all of these, certain pledges are being conducted. One important point for you to note, India as of now has not committed or has not signed to any of these three pledges that we are going to read. So this question can be asked in prelims, be mindful of the fact. Now, the first pledge is regarding tripling the renewable energy capacity. Tripling renewable energy capacity is very important to remove or to phase out the fossil fuels or to have some kind of substitute for the fossil fuels. So the International Energy Agency has highlighted, given a very important data to us, that The current capacity of renewable energy, that is of 3400 gigawatt across the world, if it is tripled, if it is tripled to about 11,000 gigawatt, we will be able to achieve a very brilliant result, and that would be to avoid 1 billion equivalent of carbon dioxide every year, not just in 7 year span, every year. So this is the result that we will be getting. Therefore, the idea is to triple it up. The idea is to triple the existing amount, the existing capacity of renewable energy into near about 9 to 11, so that we will be able to achieve this particular result. Now, this pledge is signed by 116 countries so far. India is not a part of it. You remember that. The next pledge is tripling the nuclear energy capacity. Now, you will ask that, ma'am, why nuclear energy is not considered as a part of renewable energy capacity pledge only? The reason is, while nuclear energy is a green energy because it has no amount of greenhouse gas emission, but at the same time, it is not renewable in nature because it utilizes the nuclear fuel. And the nuclear fuel, for example, uranium, plutonium, are limited in nature. So these are not renewable in nature. Therefore, we created an entirely different pledge for the nuclear energy capacity. Now, the need again has been highlighted by the International Atomic Energy Agency, which said that about 10% of the total electricity of the world right now is getting conducted, or it is getting created by just about 370 gigawatt worth of nuclear energy capacity. If we will triple it up, then we will be able to fulfill more than 60% of the total world energy requirement, and therefore drastically cutting out the need for using fossil fuel driven power plants. So here, the triple nuclear energy capacity is signed as a pledge between 22 countries. Again, India is not a part, and it is signed from 2020 to 2050. By 2050, you have to reach the triple amount of nuclear capacity as you have in 2020. Okay. Now, this will also help us to avoid about 70 billion tons of carbon equivalent emissions. And India, what about India? It has not signed the pledge yet, but India currently has got the nuclear capacity of 7 gigawatt installed currently. And it also aims that within 2023, we will also be able to triple it up. Because what we are trying to do, we are trying to enhance our infrastructure. We are trying to lay more number of reactors. We already have 8 reactors in hand. And if we create more 8 reactors, we will be able to double up or at least triple up the nuclear energy capacity of India. So these are the 2 pledges. Now the most important one is the global cooling pledge. Now this is very interesting one because for the first time we are taking into cognizance, and this is the first ever world's collective focus onto the climate warming emissions that are causing from the coolants. So for example, there is a coolant, there is a refrigerant. Now it is meant for cooling, but rather it is performing warming for the environment. So it is to address those coolants that cause warming, and this is first of its kind. So therefore it is very important pledge, very important from examination point of view. Now the target is to reduce the amount of coolants by 2050 to at least 68% as compared to the 2022 levels. Kindly also remember the levels, the benchmark that we will be comparing them with. Then the idea is also to establish minimum energy performance of all the refrigerants or all the cooling devices that are produced in a country. For example, minimum 4 stars should be given in order to be deployed in industries, etc. That kind of minimum energy performance should be taken up by all the countries that are signatory to this pledge, and this particular performance should be released by 2030 COP. What about India? India again is not a part of this pledge, we know, but India actually is the first country to form a national policy on cooling or have a national cooling action plan. So it is a 20-year perspective plan. It all started in 2019 and we would be following some of the targets. We will be pursuing some of the targets till year 2038. So it is largely a 20-year long target, and It basically called for 20 to 25% of the reduction of the cooling demand by creating public infrastructure that is providing you cooling. Next is reduction of the refrigerant demand by 25 to 30%. Next is reduction of the cooling energy requirement and also training and certification of service sector technicians. How many of them? About 1 lakh of them. So this is India's cooling action plan. Again, very, very important from prelims and mains point of view. So these were about the pledges. And then the topic of standard positioning navigation, which is the GPS and the Indian counterpart NaVic. Now, what is the context? So, in the text context section of the Hindu, they have talked about the working of GPS. So, from the prelims point of view, we will be covering this topic because a question has been asked in prelims where they have asked about NaVic or Indian Regional Navigation Satellite System, the IRNSS. So, first of all, let's have a quick comparative between GPS, NaVic and the other prevalent standard positioning systems of the world. So, standard positioning system essentially is responsible for mapping or chalking out your location, exact location or a person's position on the earth via a satellite is deployed on the space. So, the satellite is responsible for calculating your standard position. Therefore, they are known as standard positioning systems. Let's have a comparative. So, GPS was actually a US innovation in the name of Navstar. Navstar was the first innovation done in the field of standard positioning service. This was deployed by the US Department of Defense. And this particular NaVic is developed not by the military but by the Space Organization of India, that is ISRO. This again is one very big difference. What was the launch year? Launch year, because GPS has been a pioneer in SPS, Standard Positioning System. It was launched back in 1978 by the name of Navstar, N-A-V, Navigation Star. And NaVic was launched in the year 2013. How many satellites it deployed? Because GPS is a global coverage system, it would definitely require more number of satellites. It started by deploying 24 satellites in 1978. Now it has increased it to 32 satellites. So overall 32 satellites are deployed for GPS positioning. In the case of India, it is regional in nature. It only has to cover area of all the boundary of India, covering the boundary of India. Along with that, areas that are extending beyond the boundary up to 1500 kilometer. And this question was asked in the UPSC prelims. We will have a look in the question, but please remember this fact as well. So for covering this much amount of area, we do not require 32 satellites. We would require a minimum satellite. So that would be 7 in number. Okay. Then where are these satellites positioned? So in the case of GPS, it is positioned about 20,000 kilometers above, that is in the mid-Earth orbit. And then the satellite position of NaVic, because it is deploying lesser number of orbits or lesser number of satellites, therefore it would require it to position at higher distance so that it can have a broader overview. Therefore, it is deployed in the geostationary orbit, that is up to 35,000 kilometers above the surface of the earth. Now, whether we have certain use of certain data that is restricted for military purpose only, in the case of GPS, no, it is available for only civilians and military alike. But in the case of NaVic, yes, we have got two distinct kind of data, one only for civilian purposes and second for military purpose. What about the accuracy? The accuracy of GPS is low as compared to the NaVic. So you also remember this because NaVic not only deploys rubidium advanced atomic clocks, but at the same time it has got dual frequency bands, whereas GPS has only one frequency band. That is, it can only detect through one frequency, whereas NaVic will be able to detect across frequencies. Now, there are total 5 types of countries. There are actually 5 countries and 5 types of standard positioning systems in the world, including one of India. So, India has achieved that feat in 2013. So, one is GPS of US, Galileo of European Union, GLONASS of Russia, Baidu of China, IRNSS of India. Now, I would highly recommend to have a look at this infographic available in the handout that is downloadable from the description box of this discussion to have a quick overview upon the features of these different satellite positioning systems, standard positioning system. Now, let's talk about NaVic in particular. NaVic, as we know, is a regional navigation system having regional spread. We already know the spread, that is to the boundary of India, entire boundary of India it covers. Along with that, about 1500 kilometers beyond the boundary it covers. It requires 7 satellites for it. There are 2 kinds of satellite for that. One is there are two kind of orbits for that. So one is the geostationary Earth orbit. So three of the satellites are deployed. Three satellites, as you can see in a row in linear fashion, are deployed in the geo orbit, and four are organized in a quadrilineal fashion across the geosynchronous orbit. Now, these are about the NaVic services. There will be two type of services: the standard positioning service, which is meant for all the users alike, whether it is a military personnel or whether it is a civilian. But another type of service, the encrypted service, is only restricted for military users or for the security agencies only. Now, this is about NaVic. Now, let's try to solve this question which is asked by UPSC. With reference to IRNSS has 3 satellites in geostationary and 4 satellites in geosynchronous orbit. This statement is absolutely correct. Second, IRNSS covers entire India and 5,500 square kilometer beyond its border. It is not square kilometer. Even this data is also incorrect. Rather, it is 1,500 kilometers beyond its border. Second statement is incorrect. Third, India will have its own satellite navigation system with full global coverage by the mid of 2019. So this statement is also incorrect because we are not intending to have full global coverage. The name itself suggests that it is a regional navigation system. So by that logic also we can eliminate it. So the correct answer here is option 1 only. Now coming to the last topic of the day, this is the key findings and the highlights by this report of World Meteorological Organization, which is the premier organization responsible for carrying out the meteorological activities. This is headquartered in Geneva. And one more interesting report that is produced in association with WMO or is associated vaguely with WMO is the assessment report, the AR report that we read. This AR report, assessment report, are published by IPCC. IPCC is an organization which was created by WMO along with United Nations Environment Program. So now we know about WMO and the different reports that it published. In this particular topic, we will read about the Global Climate Report highlighting the climatic trends from 2011 to 2020. Now see, this is very, very important from mains point of view. Though not in prelims, but yes, in mains, you have to write some of the data pointers and substantiate with the help of reports. So this particular report that traces events from 2011 to 2020 has observed that this decade has been the warmest on record ever since we have been calculating climate change, that is since pre-industrial levels. And it has been observed that in fact the years from 2015 to 2022 were 8 consecutively warmest years on record in the history of mankind. So these were the warmest recorded decade. This was the warmest recorded decade. And at the same time, it was observed that if we compare it with the pre-industrial level, the rise in the temperature from this particular decade has been up to 1.15 degrees centigrade. Now, this should flag a concern because what is the Paris climate goal? To achieve the limitation of the overall rise in the temperature from pre-industrial levels to up to 1.5 degrees centigrade in order to prevent the cascading effect of the climate change. But we have already reached the rise of 1.15 centigrade. That is the idea that has been showed, or that is the observation showcased by this report. Surprisingly, it also showed that it has also been the decade with the lowest number of fatalities, extreme event death. Why that happened? Because of the rising consciousness, rising international national collaboration, also because of the deployment of disaster management techniques, plans, and the efficient early warning systems, because of which we could safeguard the fatalities. We could prevent these particular disastrous events from claiming the lives of the people. It was highlighted that it was for the first time since 1950 that a particular event or none of the event that has happened in this particular decade has claimed the lives of more than 10,000 people, which was very prevalent before 1950s due to lack of awareness, lack of disaster management, lack of technology, early warning systems, etc. So this is a positive side. Next, it also showcased another positive achievement, that there is environmental recovery in the terms of ozone repairment. So the ozone that was said to be repaired since Montreal Protocol commitment, Montreal Protocol that came in the year 1987, which has universal membership. All the countries of the world are party to it. So this is very unique protocol in that sense. And as a result of the solid commitment and international collaboration, we have actually achieved visible recovery signs of the ozone hole. Then, this is the age of acceleration which has been highlighted. So, acceleration, especially in the melting of the glaciers, have been observed that the average thinning of approximately 1 meter per year has been observed in this particular decade. This is very important data point to be utilized in mains answers. So, take notes of it. Next, Greenland and Antarctica lost 38% more ice during this decade as compared to what they have been previously losing before 2021. It has also highlighted one example of the Uttarakhand rock avalanche case of 2021, where it was seen that the rampant melting of the glacier triggered another disaster. The glacier was Nanda Devi and it triggered the rock avalanche which claimed lives of many. So again, the age of acceleration is on, and it can also be seen that due to the increase in the amount of extreme events like heat waves, etc., this acceleration is also happening at rapid pace. So for example, in the case of Alps, it has been seen in the last year that the amount of snowfall that happened was pretty much less because of the climate change, because of global warming. So anyway, the amount of rainfall was less, the amount of snowfall was less. And along with that, you have your dust coming from the Sahara, which decreased the albedo. But at the same time, you've also got extreme heat waves, which struck the entire Europe. So Alps was also not left. So therefore, these heat waves further accelerated the melting of the Alps, and Alps saw the record low amount of snow in the last year. So this is one example of the acceleration of the melting or the extreme events. So it also highlighted that the highest number of human casualties have been taking place not because of human disasters or natural disasters, natural disasters, but because of the heat waves. Then the maximum amount of economic damage is happening because of the increasing frequency of tropical cyclones. We have already read in the previous analysis that why acceleration in the number of cyclones is also happening. The changing nature of the cyclone is also happening. So you can have a look. Then it also highlighted that the climate efforts, the financing efforts to curb the climate change is also ramping up. It has nearly doubled from 2011 to 2020, but again, it is not sufficient as highlighted by the COP28 also. So we would need about 7-fold increase in the total number of climate finance commitments, especially coming from the developed nations, so that we can reach the climate objective of achieving the Paris goal of limiting the overall climate rise to less than 1.5 degrees centigrade. So I hope all these topics are clear to you. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the session. Have a nice day.